All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to What Did I Want to Be When I Grew Up? Got Sam and Jeremy here again. Good to see y'all. Wish we could. But hey, if you're
Right,
watching us live, come
right.
join in the chat. Throw something on there or stop by our website, What Did I Want to Be? Um, what did I want to be? .com? Yeah, I have to check that, make sure I
Yes.
got that right. We'll put a link somewhere on the video down here somewhere. So today we're talking about people who, at least somewhat famous, kind of changed the world, and whether they did so for better or not, stuff like that. But we're doing it in the form of giving clues about the person, and then the other person's going to have to guess, try and figure out who it is that we're talking about. So I've got a list of a few people, and Sam's got some people, and it may just fall apart, and we may end up giving hints about cartoon characters. Who knows? But how about I get started here, Sam? I got one for you.
Okay.
Okay, and like before, I'm going to try and keep it gender neutral. Hopefully, I won't give away the person's gender or anything else that makes it too obvious. This
Hopefully
person,
I won't give away his gender. I mean, oops.
yeah, right, is the hers, theirs, whatever. So this is a real person. Was very ill in childhood, but studied very, very hard. Became, for what the person was famous for, known as the very first computer programmer, because they suggested not just to have a computer calculate things, but to actually have an algorithm so that its output depends on not just some raw data, but also on other inputs into the computer. This person was friends with British mathematician Charles Babbage. If you don't recognize that name, that's somebody from the early 1800s, maybe mid 1800s. So that kind of gives you a date.
Okay.
This all came, if you've seen the movie with Alan Turing in it, the Imitation Game. This is about 100 years before that, so way back
Yeah.
when. The person, you might figure out a gender here really soon. Even though their work was maybe 100 years before, this person married William King in 1835, and William King was made the Earl of Lovelace in 1838. Now you know the person's last name. And at that point, she became the Countess of Lovelace. Anything there? I know this is one
Oh
you
my
may not
gosh.
know.
I saw a I saw a PBS it was like a history
Mm-hmm.
documentary, and I think it talked about this woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um I don't remember the name. I just remember she was like a whiz at math. If I'm thinking about the
Yep.
right person, she was like a whiz at math.
Mm-hmm.
Um She lived in a castle, I believe, and was kind of if I remember correctly, lived kind of a lonely life, but
Mm-hmm.
she had some really interesting connections with people,
Yeah.
like you said, like impacted the world.
Yeah. So,
Um,
so her name was
I
Ada
don't remember.
Lovelace, and
Yeah, okay.
there's actually a person who she works out of New York City. That's a technology person. She has a little company
Uh,
called Ada Fruit that has the same first name, at least as far as I know. But though I forget her full name at the moment, but she does some amazing projects and sells cool stuff online. But Ada Lovelace, if not for some of the things she thought of, then Charles Babbage, his first mechanical computer, wouldn't have gone nearly as far as it could have. I mean,
yes.
it was crazy back then because of what they were building with and the kind of stuff they figured out.
Yeah. Okay. I remember the mechanical computer. She and her husband, before they got married, um, did they did they like work on this project together for a little while? And
That I don't
or am
know.
I
A good
thinking,
question. Yeah, I'm not
uh,
sure. It might have
I'll,
been.
I wonder if so there's this PBS series called Breakthroughs,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder if that's where I saw it. They talk
Oh,
about the computer and like how it came to be and everything. Really
cool.
fascinating. I don't remember.
All
It's been
right.
a while since I've
You
seen it.
got one for me to guess, right?
Yes, I do. Um, okay, let me pull up some of these clues. Okay, this person is living today.
All right.
Um, this person was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama.
All right.
This person is a political science professor at Stanford University,
Hmm.
um, and was the first African American to serve as provost of Stanford University.
Ooh. Ooh.
This person served as U.S. Secretary of State, um, and so you're into politics. So I wonder, I have a couple more clues that might give it away, but uh, do you want me to give them to you, or do you
Go
have
ahead and give me
any?
a little bit more, because
Okay,
when I think of secretaries of state, obviously, most of them that. Oh, no, no, no! Oh, I can see his face now. Give me another clue or two, though. Go ahead.
okay. Um, let's see.
Because it's
Okay,
not Hillary
this is
Clinton. She also served. She's obviously an African American. Was she one of the first female secretaries of state? But
who?
I can't place him. Keep going.
Okay, this one's going to give away. This offers a little more detail about one of the other
All right, go
clues.
ahead.
This person is the first woman and first African American to serve as provost of Stanford. And then the last one is this person is the first black woman to serve as U.S. Secretary of State.
Oh man, Condoleezza Rice.
Yes,
All
you're right.
right, finally.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I have there are a couple things I was really fascinated by. It's interesting when I was thinking about this, like, you and I were brainstorming different people um, to talk about and everything. And I don't know why, but Condoleezza Rice has always been impressive to me.
Hmm.
Um, and like her story is really fascinating. And there are a few things I picked that I kind of plucked out. A lot of these are from Wikipedia, but let me read something to you really quickly. In terms
Yeah.
of like what did she want to be when she grew up? This is a little bit of a hint. It said um, Condoleezza Rice began to learn French, music, figure skating, and ballet at the age of 3. At the
Wow.
age of 15, she began piano classes with the goal of becoming a concert pianist. Um, and she, so there was a time when she wanted to go into music. She wanted to, um, I don't know if it was that she wanted to be a concert pianist the whole time. I think that's what it was,
Hmm.
based on some of the other information. But this kind of changed the trajectory of her life. Let me read this part. And then I have a question for you.
Hmm.
Um, okay, Condoleezza Rice initially majored in music in college. She went to, where was it? Denver University, I think, University of Denver.
Hmm.
Um, so Condoleezza Rice initially majored in music, and after her sophomore year, she went to the Aspen Music Festival and School. Sorry, did I say that right? She went to the Aspen Music Festival and School. There, she later said she met students of greater talent than herself, and she doubted her career prospects as a pianist. She began to consider an alternative major. Um,
Hmm.
so, okay, my question for you is what I think this is something that a lot of people come across. They run into these circumstances in life where you think you want to pursue one path, um, but things change. Maybe you go to something like this and you kind of start seeing where other people are and how much better than they are, how much better they are than you at a particular thing. You start to doubt yourself,
Hmm.
or question your career path or whatever it might be. So my question for you is, do you have any experiences like that, whether it's personal experiences or maybe someone you know, um, where you were going down a path or you thought you wanted to do something and you ran into these obstacles or roadblocks or whatever it was that caused you to doubt, and think maybe this isn't the right path for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think of one in particular. Uh, I think for a long time when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor, get into the medical something, some kind of
Yeah.
medical doctor profession, whatever. And then, got into high school and while I was pretty good at math, I didn't like really enjoy it. Okay at chemistry, really liked a lot of the sciences, but not chemistry, and I thought they needed a lot of chemistry. And it really felt like, yeah, this whole medical thing is not really the right place for me. And I mean, I always joke about it that I've got really bad handwriting, so I've got one of the most important qualifications for being a
You're
doctor. At least that's what all the pharmacists tell us before, back when they actually had handwritten prescriptions.
right.
But yeah, I was kind of going that way for a while, and then decided to go a different direction. I had a scoutmaster that was very influential that way because he was a medical doctor, but at the same time, that mostly just caused problems. We were set up to go to scout camp, and he'd get a phone call that he had to go and deliver a baby because he was, you know,
Oh, okay.
OBGYN, and we'd all sit around on his front yard waiting for that so he could come back, and then we'd drive to scout camp.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow. Did that, okay, so that's interesting. Did that, those sorts of experiences, seeing how, um, as a doctor, if you're on call, your time isn't really your time. You have to be
Yeah.
available. Did
Hmm.
that influence your decision at all? Seeing
Maybe
like, oh, maybe I don't
I don't
want to,
I don't remember that being a big influence in that decision, but it looking back now, it certainly would because you don't want to have to be completely tied up. I guess in that case, though, they can you can become part of a practice, and you got other doctors, and at least you're taking turns being on call. But could you imagine
right,
being a small town doctor now or a long time ago when you are the medical professional in this town of a few hundred or a few thousand people in the boonies somewhere? If you're not around there, what are they going to do? Have to drive to the nearest city or
right,
something.
right. Oh my goodness, crazy. So what
I mean,
made you,
on the plus
go
side,
ahead.
there's a lot of recognition because people they respect you and they appreciate what you do, but it ended up just not being quite my speed.
Yeah. So what ultimately do you think had the biggest impact? Was it the the science classes, or because you're a pretty sharp guy, you know math, you know science. What was it for you that ultimately changed your mind? Do you remember?
It was probably some of the things that my parents had done to sort of encourage my siblings and my interest in technology because they saw that we had all of us had interest in different kinds of technology. So this was like the early 80s, and computers were just in their infancy, personal computers, really.
Yeah.
And they went out of their way. They went to a computer store and found this old Commodore VIC 20. This is ancient computing technology.
I'll be
For those
honest,
of
I
you out
haven't heard
there,
of that.
yeah, it had a blazing 3 kilobytes of RAM.
Oh,
For
wow.
comparison, the Commodore 64 had 64K, so this was way early, and we would write computer programs on this thing, and the only way you could save them when the computer gets turned off is with a cassette tape drive. So like Walkman audio
Oh,
cassettes from the
wow.
80s, it would
Yeah.
record them onto that with what sounded like modem sounds. So occasionally someone would
Okay.
pull one of those tapes out in the car, pop it in, thinking it was, a comedy routine or music, and you hear this loud screeching squeal, and like, oh crap, no, guys, don't bring your VIC 20 tapes into the car. We don't want to listen to them. You
That's
recorded over my
great.
Dr. Demento show. Stop that.
Did you have a hard time shifting? It sounds like it was probably a pretty easy transition from, thinking I'm going to go into medicine to I'm going to go into technology, but did you have some difficulty there? Like, was it like you had been so much in this mindset, like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor or whatever, and now it's like y- to maybe to the point where like you kind of identified yourself as a future doctor or
Yeah.
whatever it might be, to
I
now
think I
like,
was
oh,
I think I was young
now I'm
enough.
not.
It didn't really get that deeply ingrained. I was probably
Okay,
10 or 12 or something when I kind of started making that shift. So
yeah,
if I had been really set on that as a teenager, I probably would have stuck to it longer. But there were a lot of fun and interesting things. I started getting into media production, and I mean, primitive at the time. This is
yeah,
VHS videotapes, editing from one VCR to another kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
had a really influential high school teacher, Mr. Jefferson, who was he was in drama. He taught drama, debate, stage crew, all of that kind of stuff. And I wasn't even officially in his class for the first year or two, but wandered in as a freshman while they were doing rehearsals for the school play, which at the time was I think that one was Kiss Me Kate or something like that. And I just started volunteering, helping out with some of the technology, and ended up doing a lot of theater in high school, and ended up even taking a few of the classes officially rather than just being the sidekick. And
Yeah.
as a teacher, he was like the most influential teacher. I compare him now to my kids' high school teachers. They've just finished, but they had drama classes, and they got to deal with situations where the drama teacher was showing a little favoritism to certain people, including one of her own kids. That a little bit of nepotism
That
going on
never
there.
happens. That
No,
never
no, not
happens.
at
No.
all. Yeah, that probably wasn't a good choice to have your kid there at your own high school that you're teaching at, but it's another story. And because of that, not just my kids, but lots of kids in that program really missed out on opportunities. I contrasted that with my high school drama teacher, Mr. Jefferson. He was incredible and incredibly flexible. He didn't actually have a lot of the theater skills himself. I mean, I think he was originally hired as like a photography teacher, but also taught debate and stage crew and drama because he had some
Really?
background in those. So he would bring in former students to be directors and stuff like that. But because of that, he was the most friendly and open person as far as the shows went. So he started a community theater. He mortgaged his house to the limit to buy an old church, and we built a community theater there and did shows. And he was so flexible and great with it. We did a run of Grease for, I don't know, 3 weeks or more. And all of the cast members, uh, we all traded up roles. We would play different roles, different nights. Everyone knew the show that well. And he was great with that.
Yeah.
Not only didn't care, he encouraged that kind of thing. With my kids' experience in drama in high school, it was completely the opposite. So I'm going way off on a tangent here,
No, no.
but in so after all of that in high school, I started at college, and I had this big decision to make. Do I want to go into something like engineering? Do I want to go into media, film, theater arts, that kind of stuff? So I ended
Yeah.
up taking classes in both areas. I minored in one and ended up with a major in the other. And what made that final decision for me was lifestyle. And as a looking back as a younger teenager, I probably would have chosen media production and world travel kind of lifestyle. But as I got a little bit older, I was thinking more about, I'd like to have more of a stable family life. And I ended up choosing
Right.
to major in engineering. I still love it. It's no less a passion
Yeah.
than the media arts stuff was. But I made the choice in college to pursue the career side of engineering and do the other one as the minor, as the passion, as the fun stuff. So, took a theater makeup class in college that was a lot of fun.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah,
That's
doing everything
awesome.
from all the old age and youth correctives. And I only took the first class, so we didn't get to do the cool big latex, um, you know, uh, add-ons kinds of things. I
Like
really want to make
Worf
my
from
own.
Star Trek,
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah,
big forehead.
could totally do that. Or I could do some elf ears for Lord of the Rings or
Right.
Star Trek or something. But so that one was a lot of fun, and in fact, getting into that class is a story unto itself that we can talk about sometime. But doing the engineering stuff, I still loved a lot, and knew that I'd have better career opportunities there. So now I kind of get to do both because I teach some courses online through Pluralsight and have other content on YouTube and elsewhere, and I'm using those theater skills that way. But the engineering side is usually the content that goes into them. Except for this, of
Yeah.
course, because this is just about fun stuff. And
That's okay. So I didn't know all that about you. So that's really good to know. It's that makes a lot of sense. Like when Jeremy and I were talking about this idea, I was thinking more like, oh, just simple podcast, and Jeremy's like, we should do like a video podcast, and I'm thinking, oh, that's a lot of work. And
uh-huh.
Jeremy's over here doing all this work and just like soaking it up, just loving it. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm just freeloading. So, but
It's teamwork
that's
here.
really fascinating because um, it's like I joked with you earlier that like you're setting all this stuff up and everything, and I joked that you're like in your element, but you really are like um, that's really interesting. That's awesome. Um, okay, one more question. I'm going to read a little
Hmm.
bit about um, there are 3 paragraphs. They're not super long, but there are a lot of names in here that I'm probably going to just butcher. So I'll do my best. I'm going to read a little bit about Condoleezza Rice's how she got into politics. Even though she's a political science professor, she wasn't really a politician of any kind.
Hmm.
So let me just read a little background here, and I want to ask you about networking. One of the things that stood out to
Hmm.
me in this little section of her life was the value of networking and how
Hmm.
that can often lead to opportunities. So here we go. It says Condoleezza Rice was hired by Stanford University as an assistant professor of political science, um, from where she served as or worked as a that professor from 81 to 87. She was
Hmm.
promoted to associate professor in 1987, a post that she held until 1993. She was a specialist on the Soviet Union and gave lectures on the subject for the Berkeley-Stanford Joint Program, led by UC Berkeley professor George W. This name, I'm going to slaughter this name, Bracelauer in the mid 1980s. At a 1985 meeting of arms control, I wonder if this is a typo or something. At a 1985 meeting of arms control experts at Stanford,
Whatever.
whatever that is. I'm not familiar, of course. Um, Rice's performance drew the attention of Brent Scowcroft, who had served as National Security Advisor under Gerald Ford. With the election of
Oh.
George H.W. Bush, Scowcroft returned to the White House as National Security Advisor in 1989, and he asked Rice to become his Soviet expert on the United States National Security Council. According to R. Nicholas Burns, President Bush was captivated by Rice and relied heavily on her advice in his dealings with Mikhail Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin.
Hmm.
Okay, last paragraph.
So that's
Because
really
she
what
would,
it was,
yeah, go
that
ahead.
introduction there. That's really what started getting her into politics. It was the networking, getting to know people. It wasn't
Yeah,
that she was trying to get there, it just kind of happened.
yeah, it just kind of, yeah, exactly. Um, okay, final paragraph. Because she would have been ineligible for tenure at Stanford if she had been absent for more than 2 years, she returned there in 1991. She had taken under the she was taken under the wing of George P. Shultz, Ronald Reagan Secretary of State from 1982 to 1989, who was a fellow at the Hoover Institution, which is Stanford's. Um, it's an institution at Stanford for politics, I think. Schultz included Rice in a luncheon club of intellectuals who met every few weeks to discuss foreign affairs. In 1992, Schultz, who was a board member of Chevron Corporation, recommended Rice for a spot on the Chevron board. Chevron was
Hmm.
pursuing a $10 billion development project in Kazakhstan,
Kazakhstan.
and as Kazakhstan, that's right, you're right. Um, and as a Soviet specialist, Rice knew the president of how do you say it? Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, I think.
Okay. I think you're right. I think you're right.
Everyone's gonna be out there laughing
Kazakhstan.
at me. It's like, yeah, you corrected him, and you did pronounced it worse than he did.
Correct, correct and wrong. No, I think you're right. I think you're right. This takes me back to high school
So
geography, and
so
I think
what
that's correct.
what are you getting to at the end of it? You know, what with all of those things happening, what how did that turn and change her life?
Let me just finish this out. So okay, she was the Soviet specialist.
Uh-huh.
Um, let's see. Let me back it up here. Chevron was pursuing a $10 billion development project
Yeah.
in. Am I saying this right? I'm gonna forget this every time.
A country.
Kazakhstan. This country, formerly of the Soviet Union, Rice knew the
Yeah.
president of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna butcher this forever. She traveled to
We're gonna
Kazakhstan.
we're gonna turn these clips into a YTP of you mispronouncing Kazakhstan over and over. This is gonna be
This
fun.
is a disaster. Okay. Let's see here. Um, the rest of this I can probably just skip. During this period, Rice was also
Yeah.
appointed to the boards of Transamerica Corporation and Hewlett Packard. Okay. Anyway, so tons of opportunities going from being a political science professor to on the board for many large corporations to getting into politics. And from there, she got into politics a little bit, and then from there, just kind of went took off. Um, so the value of networking. Um, so I'm curious, like in your career, how has networking played a role to get you to where you are today?
Hmm. So let's see. The first job I had out of college was an on-campus job interview, so there wasn't really a lot of networking involved in that one. The second job I took, I moved over to a startup after being at the first job for 5 years or so, and that job came about just because one of the founders of that company was one of my study partners in college. It was somebody that I knew and worked with in school. So
Okay.
that second job was definitely due to networking. The job after that I moved on to as well was because of other people that I knew from work and all of that. So definitely a lot of it can come from networking in that way for better or worse. There's some kind of missed out opportunities too. I don't remember the name of the person or anything like that, but way back when I was at my first job, I had an opportunity to leave that job after only a year or two out of college and go to what was then a startup. Now, I can't say for sure that this is a company that you're all familiar with or not, but it could have been. I was invited to join this little startup company and help them make a DVD rental vending machine. So
Wait
I
a
don't
minute.
know what color those boxes ended up being, but I
You,
might have been invited to be part of a little company you may have heard of called Redbox, maybe. Again, I'm not sure if it was them or somebody else that was a competitor to them, so I can't say that with certainty. But it's possible that with that opportunity, I could have ended up on a completely different career path. I could be nowhere near where I am today, not know
yeah.
and work with all the people that I work with today. So, could have been for better or
Was that
worse.
where was that? Where geographically, where would that have taken you?
I was near
Would
Austin,
you?
Texas at the time. So
Okay.
I'm not sure where Redbox started up, whether they had people there or not, or anything like that. But
Okay. That's wow, that's really
well, it would
oh
have
my
been
goodness. Okay.
scarier if I'd been offered to, take a job in the mailroom of some little tiny startup called Netflix early on in their business, right?
Yeah.
And stuck around for a few years.
Oh
No, that's
wow.
cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah. How
Um,
about you? We got to hear at least a little bit about you. Well, how did you get to where you are? Before we wrap
um,
up for today, because we probably got to end soon.
okay. Um, in terms of networking, it's funny how life, for me, I have friends who I look at and I think, wow, your career path was just like from an outsider, it looks like your career path was just like a straight line. It's very linear.
Mhm.
You know what you wanted to be when you grew up, and you got on the path, and you just move forward. And for me, it was not like that in the least, not at all.
Mhm.
I for the longest time, I think since I was in junior high, I knew that I wanted to get into entrepreneurship at some point in the future. Um, but I never really looked into it too much, other than like learning about business plans. Excuse me, learning about business plans, um, and like how you write up a business plan and all this stuff. And I remember looking into it and thinking, wow, you have all these projections that you need to make, and these projections are based on what exactly? Like,
Mhm.
how do
Total
I
guesses.
know? Yeah, like you're just taking a random number out of the air, like, oh, this
Hmm.
our sales are going to be,
Yeah.
whatever. And so that never really made sense to me, and so that was a major obstacle um, to starting a business, because like I'm not very good with theoretical abstract ideas, it has to be very concrete. And the way that business plans are written to me is very theoretical, very abstract. Like though I don't know how someone can write a business plan with any sort of confidence. Um, it wasn't until later, um, actually about the time that I met you, Jeremy, that I came across the whole concept of the lean startup. And um, there's a really great book, I'm looking at it right now, called The Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank. So for any entrepreneurs out there, look up Steve Blank. He has a great course on, it's a free course on Udacity. Um, anyway, if you want to learn how to start a business, go that route. It's a really, I won't get into the details, but that's what you should do. Um,
Cool.
anyway, so for a long time, I wanted to go into business. I majored in business in college because, and business is one of those majors where if you don't know what to major in, you major in business. But
Right.
for me, I really liked business. Um, the problem was I never had any sort of life plan. I just knew I wanted to go into business, and I never really
Hmm.
stopped to think about it. Nobody, when I was growing up, sat me down and said, talk to me about goals and what do you want to be when you grow up, and what's the path to get there. Um, I was just kind of taking it day by day, which is a terrible, a terrible way to live your life because you find yourself stuck in all sorts of ruts all the time. Um, and it's all worked out, but not without significant struggle along the way. And
Yeah.
so I major in business, I graduate, and then it's like, okay, now what? Um, I wasn't until after I graduated that I realized, oh, I actually want to get into entrepreneurship, but I have no idea even where to begin. So I was married and we were expecting our first child on the way,
Mm.
um, and so it's like, okay, well, I need to figure out um, what to do here, for a career. And anyway, so through a series of just trying different things out um, over a period of years, I stumbled into you. And Jeremy needed, so I was actually at this point, I'd kind of gotten into web development and knew some things, but was not really loving it, was burned out from the work. And so I meet Jeremy, and he and his company, Constellation Labs, um, were kind of talking about bringing on a business manager. And I thought, hey, maybe I could step in and help out with some of that stuff. And said, well, so I talked to Jeremy, and he said, we're not really ready to do anything like that. Those are plans for later on down the road. But we have this web project that we need done. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh man, I don't want to do web development. But I was like, okay, well, I'll do it because the place I was working at was a startup, and I loved it, but they lost their funding. It's like the
Ooh.
story of my life. I find something great, they lose funding. I'm like, really? Like, what, what's going on? So they had lost funding, and I was looking for something else anyway. And I thought, okay, well, this is supposed to be a short-term project. I'll pick it up, and that ended up being one of the best decisions of my life. Um, in terms of my career, because I went from being like pretty junior, a junior level web developer, to like, because Jeremy said, okay, what it is we just need like a line chart, line graph that plots some data. Can you do that? And I was like, sure, I could do that. And and then the next thing was we need it to be like a real-time data chart. Like, okay, so I need to figure out how to plot data in real time. Okay. And then from there, it was like, it just kept building. And this project that was supposed to be, I think, like 3 or 6 months long, 2 years later, we are still building it out. And, and
Because
anyway, it
they
was
kept
real.
adding features and features and more
Yeah.
features, and then you had to learn all the new skills to do those new features.
Yeah. And it ended up being the coolest thing. What I realized was one of the reasons why I didn't like web development was because as a junior level developer, I wasn't trusted with anything, and it was very boring. Um,
Hmm.
and working with Jeremy, it was like it opened up a whole new world to me. Like it was fun. Like the stuff they were asking for, the features that this client was asking for were really challenging, things I'd never done before. And I thought, really? Like I have to do this? So I just like started reading up on things and figuring it out. And that's how it was every step of the way. And it was such a thrilling ride. It was a lot of fun. Um, and from there, that project came to an end, and that was just contract work. And so I had to go and find some other jobs and things like that. And um, then the pandemic hit and all this stuff. But it was, the pandemic was hard for everybody. We were in. It's funny you mentioned Austin because we were in the Austin area also when the pandemic hit, and we had moved there because it was a big tech hub. Then the pandemic hits, and you know, companies were shutting down, people were losing their jobs all over the place, and we're like, oh my goodness. Um, and anyway, but through a series of like random uh, events, I guess, like some recruiter reached out to me, he's like, hey, I'm hiring for this job over here. They need someone who has your skill set. And, so he said this was the most interesting thing. He said, based on your resume and your portfolio, I can tell you don't want to be this was the phrase, a cog in the wheel. Or, sorry,
A cog
what's
in the
the phrase?
machine or something. Yeah. Yeah.
A cog in the machine. You're right. You're right. Um, you don't want to just be like a warm body sitting in a seat and doing what you're told. You want to branch out and give me something challenging, give me something to think through. I want to solve difficult problems. And when he said that, I thought, yes, exactly. You have been able to encapsulate in one simple phrase um, what I find interesting about web development. Um, anyway, and so it's gone from there. I really like web development. What I realized is I don't love it for I don't love the like just sit down and do what you're told. I like to
Yeah.
kind of broaden my horizons.
That's cool.
My battery is about to run out, I just realized. What the heck?
Well, we were about ready to wrap up anyway. So
Okay, so that's
uh,
good.
we'll 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 do again tomorrow. We'll see you then. We'll stop the stream at this point. Feel free to comment, subscribe.